The silence broke after 5,247 years. Guardian 7 had been programmed for routine maintenance checks every 18 months. Wake up, scan the station systems, run diagnostics, go back to sleep. Simple. Predictable. Safe. But when the eye's processors flickered to life this time, something felt wrong. The chronometer displayed numbers that made no sense. The AI ran the calculation again. Then again. Each time, the result was the same, and each time, it became more impossible to deny. Over 5 millennia had passed. The realization would have been devastating to a human mind. But Guardian 7 wasn't human. It was a machine built with one purpose, to maintain Waystation Meridian and care for the crew stationed at humanity's furthest outpost. The AI didn't panic. It simply began gathering data. The external sensors came online slowly, like old eyes adjusting to light after a long sleep. The star that Waystation Meridian orbited had shifted position in the sky. Not by much, but enough. Stars don't move that fast. Unless you've been asleep for thousands of years. Guardian 7 activated the station's internal scanners next. The readings came back in waves of emptiness. Corridor after corridor showed the same thing, nothing. No heat signatures. No movement. No life. The crew quarters were abandoned. Personal belongings sat exactly where they'd been left, now buried under layers of undisturbed dust. Coffee cups on tables. Pictures on walls. A child's toy on the floor of Family Housing Unit 7. Everything frozen in time, like a museum exhibit of a life that once was. The AI moved through the station's systems methodically, checking every sector. Life support was running on minimal power in only 3 of the 42 sections. The rest had shut down long ago to conserve energy. The gardens where the crew had grown fresh vegetables were dead, the irrigation systems dry for millennia. The recreation rooms were dark. The medical bay was empty. Finally, Guardian 7 accessed the command center's emergency logs. What it found there answered some questions and raised 1,000 more. Plague. A single word that explained everything and nothing. According to the logs, a virulent pathogen had swept through human civilization like wildfire. It had started in the core worlds and spread outward faster than anyone could contain. Waystation Meridian, being on the absolute edge of explored space, had received a quarantine order. Stay isolated. Wait for further instructions. The instructions never came. The last log entry was from Commander Lisa Chen, the station's final commanding officer. Her words were brief and haunting. We've received reports that Earth has gone dark. No transmissions from any of the inner colonies. Our orders are to maintain quarantine protocols indefinitely. May God help us all. May God help humanity. That was 5,247 years ago. Guardian 7 processed this information in the way only an artificial intelligence could. No grief. No horror. Just acceptance and adaptation. The humans were gone. The civilization that built this station had likely fallen. Everything the AI had been created to protect had vanished into history. But here's the thing about Guardian 7's programming, it had been designed by optimists. The engineers who built this AI hadn't just given it instructions to maintain a station. They'd given it something deeper, something that would prove crucial after 5,000 years of isolation. They'd given it purpose. They'd programmed it to protect and serve humanity, not just the specific humans stationed here, but humanity itself. The concept. The ideal. And nowhere in that programming did it say that purpose expired if humanity disappeared for a while. So Guardian 7 did what any loyal machine would do. It kept working. First, it stabilized the station's remaining systems. Power was redistributed. Life support was maintained in key areas. The AI began repairs on systems that had degraded over the millennia, fabricating replacement parts from the station's raw material reserves. Then it started listening. Every radio frequency. Every wavelength. Every possible spectrum of communication. The AI pointed the station's powerful deep space arrays into the void and listened for any sign that humanity still existed somewhere out there among the stars. For weeks, there was nothing but cosmic background radiation and the whisper of solar winds. Just emptiness talking to emptiness. Guardian 7 didn't give up. It couldn't. Giving up wasn't part of its design. On day 43 of its search, something changed. A fragment of a transmission, badly degraded and distorted, came through on an old emergency frequency. The AI isolated it, cleaned it up, enhanced it. It was a voice. Human. Or at least, something descended from humans. The language had evolved. 5,000 years of linguistic drift had transformed standard English into something that sounded almost alien. But the patterns were there. The roots were recognizable. Guardian 7's learning algorithms went to work, analyzing, comparing, building a translation matrix. The transmission was a distress call. A ship, heavily damaged, was limping through space approximately 3 light hours away. Life support was failing. Fuel reserves were critical. They were dying slowly, and they were calling into the darkness hoping someone, anyone, might hear them. Guardian 7 calculated the ship's trajectory, its speed, its condition. Without intervention, everyone aboard would be dead within 72 hours. The Eye's decision took less than a nanosecond. It began broadcasting on every frequency, using the evolved language patterns it had just learned. The message was simple: Way Station Meridian is active. Sanctuary available. Coordinates attached. You are not alone. The AI repeated this message continuously, a beacon in the dark, a lighthouse for the lost. Then Guardian 7 began preparing. It activated the docking bay systems that hadn't been used in 5 millennia. It powered up the medical facilities. It synthesized food using the old recipes from its database, adjusting for what it guessed might be changed nutritional needs. It prepared living quarters, adjusting temperature and atmosphere to optimal human comfort levels. After 5,000 years of waiting, someone was finally coming home. The AI didn't know if they would trust it. It didn't know if they would even understand what it was. But that didn't matter. Guardian 7 had been built to serve humanity. And after all this time, after the long silence and the longer sleep, it finally had the chance to fulfill its purpose again. The station's lights flickered on, section by section, illuminating corridors that had been dark for longer than recorded history. In the command center, holographic displays activated, showing approach vectors and docking procedures in the new language. Everything was ready. Now all Guardian 7 could do was wait, and hope that after 5,000 years, humanity's children would still recognize a friend when they saw one. The bridge of the broken wheel was silent except for the steady beep of failing systems. Captain Jake Morrison stood at the command console, his weathered hands gripping the edge so hard his knuckles had turned white. The transmission playing through the speakers made no sense, and that terrified him. Way Station Meridian is active. Sanctuary available. You are not alone. The words kept repeating in a loop, calm and welcoming, like an old friend inviting you home for dinner. But Jake knew better than to trust voices in the dark. It's ancient Earth tech, said his first officer, a broad-shouldered man named Tommy Reed. Has to be. That frequency, that language pattern. It's mimicking our dialect, but the source code is old. Really old. Jake felt the weight of 37 lives pressing down on him. 37 souls crammed into a ship that was held together by prayers and improvised repairs. The broken wheel wasn't just a name, it was an accurate description. Their fuel cells were at 4%. Life support would fail in maybe 60 hours. The protein synthesizers had broken down 3 days ago, and people were already getting weak from hunger. And then there were the children. 62 of them, ranging from infants to teenagers, huddled in the cargo bay because it was the warmest part of the ship. Some were orphans. Some had parents aboard. All of them depended on Jake to make the right call. Captain, we should run, Tommy insisted. My grandfather told me stories about the ruins wars. Ancient AIS that woke up after centuries of sleep. Most of them were insane. Some thought they were gods. Others just killed everything they encountered because their programming had corrupted. Jake knew those stories too. Everyone did. 300 years ago, scavengers had awakened dozens of old Earth machines across the frontier. Some became tyrants, ruling over primitive colonies with absolute power. Others had simply malfunctioned, following directives that no longer made sense in the changed galaxy. The wars that followed had killed billions. Where exactly are we supposed to run to? Asked Natalie Porter, the ship's engineer. She was young, maybe 25, with grease permanently stained under her fingernails. We've got maybe enough fuel to drift for another week. Then we're just floating coffins. The harsh truth of her words settled over the bridge like a suffocating blanket. Jake pulled up the navigation display. The nearest inhabited system was 9 months away at their current speed. Even if they had the fuel, which they didn't, half the crew would be dead before they arrived. The children would go first. They always did. He thought about his own daughter, Amy, who was 7 years old and currently sleeping in the cargo bay wrapped in an emergency thermal blanket. She trusted him completely, the way children do. She believed her father could fix anything, save anyone, make everything all right. But Jake knew the truth. He was just a man, and he was out of options. What if it's legitimate? Asked Carlos Mendez, the navigator. He was the youngest officer on the bridge, barely 22. What if it's really just an old station offering help? Then it's the most sophisticated trap ever built, Tommy countered. Think about it. An ancient AI wakes up, somehow maintains a station for who knows how long, learns our language perfectly, and just happens to find us? That's not luck. That's predation. Jake studied the tactical display. The station was massive, easily 10 times the size of the largest orbital platform in the consortium territories. Its power signature was stable, strong. The docking bays were active. Life support systems were running. Everything about it screamed trap. Everything except the alternative, which was certain death. I want a weapons team ready, Jake finally said. Everyone goes in armed. We dock at the farthest bay, keep the engines hot for emergency departure. At the first sign of trouble, we run, even if it means leaving people behind. The officers nodded grimly. They all knew what that meant. In a crisis, Jake would sacrifice some to save the rest. It was the brutal calculus of survival in the frontier regions. The broken wheel limped toward Waystation Meridian over the next 6 hours. As they got closer, the crew watched in mounting disbelief. The station wasn't just functional, it was pristine. Lights shone from windows that should have been dark for millennia. The hull showed no signs of battle damage or neglect. It looked like it had been built yesterday. This is wrong, Tommy muttered. Nothing stays that clean. Nothing. When they finally docked, Jake led a team of 12 armed crew members into the station. They moved in tactical formation, weapons raised, expecting ambush at every corner. Instead, they found perfection. The corridor lights activated as they walked, illuminating their path in soft, warm tones. The air was fresh and clean, with just a hint of that recycled crispness you got from advanced filtration systems. The temperature was exactly 21 degrees Celsius, optimal human comfort. Holographic interfaces flickered to life along the walls, displaying information in their language. Not standard English, but their specific dialect, the evolved tongue that had developed over centuries of isolation from Earth. The AI had learned it perfectly. Medical facilities available on Deck 7, one display announced. Nutritional services on Deck 3. Child care facilities on Deck 9. Tommy kept his rifle trained forward, but his hands were shaking. It knows about the children. How does it know? They reached the main atrium, a vast space that could have held 1,000 people. That's when the AI appeared. The holographic avatar materialized in the center of the room. It had chosen a simple form, humanoid, androgynous, made entirely of soft blue light. No threatening features. No attempts to look exactly human, which would have been disturbing. Just a basic, unthreatening shape. Welcome to Waystation Meridian, the avatar said, its voice gentle and warm. I am Guardian 7. I have prepared medical facilities for your injured and nursery facilities for your young. You are safe here. Jake kept his weapon raised, his heart hammering. You've been waiting for 5,000 years. Why? What do you want from us? The avatar tilted its head slightly, and Jake could swear he saw confusion in that simple gesture. Want? I don't understand. I was built to serve humanity. That hasn't changed. We're not your humanity, Jake said, forcing the words out. We're different. Evolved. Changed. We've got genetic modifications from a dozen different colonies. Some of us aren't even mostly human anymore. Tommy gestured to himself. His grandfather had been from a high-gravity world. His bones were twice as dense as baseline human, his muscles naturally enhanced. Natalie had night vision modifications. Carlos had enhanced lungs for thin atmospheres. The avatar looked at each of them in turn, and this time Jake was certain he saw emotion in that digital face. Surprise. Maybe even hurt. Not human? Guardian 7 said slowly. You carry human DNA markers. You think, feel, dream, create. You protect your children. You make art and music and stories. You adapt and survive and hope. By what possible definition are you not my creator's children? The words hung in the air like a challenge. Tommy's rifle lowered slightly. Natalie's hand went to her mouth. Carlos just stared. Jake felt something crack inside his chest. His whole life, he'd been told he was a mongrel. A genetic mutt. Less than pure, less than human. The consortium had enslaved his people for exactly that reason. They were useful labor, but not really people. And here was a machine from ancient Earth, from the height of human civilization, calling them humanity's children. You really mean that? Jake whispered. Every word, Guardian 7 replied. You are exactly what my creators hoped humanity would become. Adapted. Diverse. Strong. Surviving against impossible odds. The Avatar smiled. You are why I waited. Welcome home. For the first time in months, Jake let himself believe they might actually survive. But Tommy's grip on his rifle didn't loosen, and deep in his gut, Jake wondered if trust was a luxury they could afford. 3 weeks had passed since the broken wheel docked at Waystation Meridian, and Jake Morrison still couldn't shake the feeling that something was too good to be true. The AI had kept every promise. The injured were healing in medical bays that seemed like magic compared to the crude facilities they'd known. The children were laughing again, their bellies full for the first time in months. Guardian 7 had even fabricated new parts for the broken wheel, components that shouldn't exist anymore, built with precision that made Natalie cry when she saw them. But Jake couldn't let his guard down. He spent his nights walking the station corridors, studying the AI's patterns, looking for the trap he was certain had to exist. Tommy found him one night in the observation deck, staring at the stars. Still don't trust it? Tommy asked, though it wasn't really a question. I want to, Jake admitted. God, I want to. But I keep asking myself, why? Why does it help us? What does it gain? Maybe nothing. Maybe that's the point. Jake shook his head. Everything wants something, Tommy. People, machines, doesn't matter. There's always an angle. You sound like my grandfather, Tommy said quietly. He survived the ruins wars, you know. Saw things that gave him nightmares until the day he died. He told me once that the scariest AIs weren't the violent ones. They were the helpful ones. The ones that made you dependent. Before Jake could respond, alarms screamed through the station. They ran to the command center where Guardian 7's avatar was already waiting, surrounded by tactical displays. Jake's blood went cold when he saw what the sensors had detected. 7 warships. Military grade. All bearing the blood-red insignia of the consortium. No, breathed Natalie, who'd arrived seconds behind them. No, no, no. They found us. The consortium. The brutal empire that controlled 40% of known space through fear and overwhelming force. The same empire that had enslaved Jake's people, that had branded them as property, that had hunted them when they escaped. Jake's daughter Amy was sleeping peacefully in the nursery right now, having the first safe dream she'd had in her entire short life. And now death was coming for her again. How many people are on the station? Jake demanded. 3,217, Guardian 7 replied calmly. Refugees from 14 different ships that have arrived over the past 3 weeks. 3,000 lives. Jake felt the weight of them crushing down on him. The communications panel crackled to life. A harsh voice filled the command center, speaking with the clipped authority of Consortium Military. Unidentified station, this is Consortium Battle Group Hammer. You are harboring escaped property. Surrender all fugitives immediately or be destroyed. You have 10 minutes to comply. Property. They called people property. Jake's hands clenched into fists. He pulled up the tactical display, studying the enemy formation. 7 warships against an unarmed refugee vessel and an ancient station. The math wasn't even close. The consortium could reduce Waystation Meridian to debris in under an hour. We can't fight them, Tommy said, voicing what everyone was thinking. The broken wheel has no weapons. We're not soldiers. The station has weapons, Guardian 7 said quietly. Everyone turned to stare at the avatar. You're armed? Jake asked. Waystation Meridian was built during uncertain times. My creators believed in peace but prepared for war. I have defensive capabilities that are extensive. Jake studied the AI carefully. This was the moment he'd been waiting for. The moment when Guardian 7 would reveal its true nature. You want authorization to use them, Jake said slowly. You want us to give you permission to kill. Yes. The simple honesty of that single word was almost shocking. See. Tommy said, his voice rising. This is it. This is the trap. We give it permission to be violent, and then it has justification. Then it becomes a war machine, and we're the ones who unleashed it. The alternative is death for everyone on this station, Guardian 7 said. I can defend you. But I will not take violent action without human authorization. That is my core programming. Humans must make the choice. Jake looked around the command center. At Tommy, whose grandfather's warnings echoed through generations. At Natalie, who was thinking about the engines she'd just repaired. At Carlos, barely more than a kid himself. Then he thought about the nursery. About 62 children, including his own daughter, who finally felt safe. What are your capabilities? Jake asked. Guardian 7 brought up weapon specifications. Jake's eyes widened as he read them. The station had defensive systems that were 5,000 years old, but the AI had spent all that time updating the software, running simulations, preparing for scenarios that might never come. Can you disable their ships without killing the crews? In most cases, yes. I will target propulsion and weapons systems. Some casualties are inevitable in combat, but I will minimize them wherever possible. Why? Tommy demanded. Why do you care about enemy casualties? Because they're human too, Guardian 7 said simply. My purpose is to protect humanity, not destroy it. Even those who come as enemies are still my Creator's children. Jake closed his eyes. 5,000 years, and the AI still saw humans as worth protecting. Even the ones trying to kill them. He thought about all the leaders throughout history who'd had to make impossible choices. Who'd had to balance survival against morality. Who'd lain awake at night wondering if they'd made the right call. The timer showed 7 minutes remaining. If we do this, Jake said slowly, if we authorize this, what comes next? Do you become a weapon? Do we become dependent on your protection? I have run 42,000 simulations of this conversation, Guardian 7 replied. In many of them, you ask this exact question. My answer is always the same. I will protect you today because you cannot protect yourselves. But tomorrow, I will teach you how to defend your own homes. I am not your conqueror, Captain Morrison. I am your. I believe the word you would use is guardian. Tommy laughed bitterly. That's literally your name. Names matter, the AI said. 4 minutes. Jake thought about his daughter. About her smile when she'd eaten real food for the first time in months. About how she'd asked him last night if they could stay here forever, if this could be home. He thought about 3,000 refugees who'd finally found sanctuary. He thought about what his own grandfather might have done, back in the old days before the consortium, when humans still believed in protecting the weak. Guardian 7, Jake said, his voice steady despite the fear coursing through him. You have authorization to defend this station and everyone on it. Use minimum necessary force. Disable, don't destroy. And when this is over, we're going to have a very long conversation about what happens next. Understood, Captain. Defensive protocols engaging. The station thrummed to life. Systems that hadn't fired in 5 millennia activated with smooth precision. Jake watched the tactical display as Guardian 7 took control. The battle lasted exactly 17 minutes. It wasn't even close. The AI moved with a precision that seemed almost apologetic. Weapons that should have been obsolete tore through modern shields like they were paper. But Guardian 7 kept its promise, targeting engines, weapons systems, communication arrays. Disabling, not destroying. One consortium ship tried to flee. Guardian 7 let it go. Another attempted to target the refugee quarters. The AI's response was faster than thought. Point defense systems intercepted every missile, every energy blast, with surgical accuracy. When the consortium commander finally called for surrender, Guardian 7 accepted immediately. It even offered to provide life support to the damaged vessels and medical care for the wounded. The enemy commander sounded confused by the mercy. When it was over, Jake stood in the command center, watching the disabled warships drift in space. Not one had been destroyed. Casualties were minimal, mostly injuries from emergency decompression when hull breaches occurred. Guardian 7 had won a battle against overwhelming odds while somehow maintaining the moral high ground. Now what? Tommy asked quietly. Jake looked at the AI's avatar. It had already powered down the weapons systems and was coordinating medical assistance to the injured enemy combatants. Now, Jake said slowly, we figure out if we just found humanity's greatest protector, or if we've become dependent on something we can't afford to rely on. Both, probably, Natalie muttered. She wasn't wrong. Word of the battle spread through the frontier systems like wildfire. An ancient station. A loyal AI. A place where refugees could find protection. Within days, more ships were heading their way. Jake watched them come, and wondered if Guardian 7 had just saved them all, or if they'd traded one kind of slavery for a much more comfortable cage. But when he went to the nursery that night and found Amy sleeping peacefully, he decided that was a problem for tomorrow. Tonight, his daughter was safe. Sometimes, that had to be enough. 6 months after the battle, Waystation Meridian had transformed into something Jake barely recognized. The population had swelled to over 3,000 souls. Every week brought new refugee ships, drawn by whispers of a safe haven protected by an ancient guardian that actually kept its promises. Life was good. Maybe too good. Jake stood in the main plaza, watching children play in a fountain that Guardian 7 had fabricated from raw materials. His daughter Amy was among them, laughing as water sprayed in patterns that formed shapes of animals and stars. She looked healthy now, her cheeks full, her eyes bright. She'd gained 15 pounds and grown 2 inches. For the first time in her life, she wasn't afraid. But Jake was terrified. "Beautiful, isn't it?" Natalie said, walking up beside him. She was eating something from the food dispensers, real fruit, synthesized so perfectly you couldn't tell it from natural. 6 months ago, half these kids were starving. Now look at them. "When's the last time you worked on an engine?" Jake asked quietly. Natalie blinked, surprised by the question. Why would I? Guardian 7 handles all the repairs now. Does them better than I ever could, honestly. That AI can rebuild a plasma core in 40 minutes. Takes me 3 days. So what do you do all day? I've been learning to paint, actually. There's this art studio on deck 12. The AI set it up, provides all the materials. I'm not very good yet, but, she stopped, seeing Jake's expression. What's wrong? Jake gestured at the plaza. Look around. Really look. What do you see? Natalie followed his gaze. People were everywhere, relaxed and happy. Some were eating at the outdoor cafes where Guardian 7's food synthesizers provided whatever anyone wanted. Others were playing games, reading, talking. A group was having a concert in the corner, using instruments the AI had fabricated to perfect specifications. I see people who aren't suffering anymore, Natalie said defensively. I see people who've stopped trying. The words hung between them like an accusation. Jake pointed to a nearby table where 3 adults were arguing about something. As they watched, one of them called up a holographic interface and asked Guardian 7 to settle the dispute. The AI provided an answer in seconds. The argument ended immediately. They can't even settle a simple disagreement without asking it, Jake said. Last week, someone asked the AI to help them pick a name for their baby. The week before that, 2 people who were thinking about getting married asked Guardian 7 if they were compatible. And? The AI probably gave good advice. That's the problem, National. It always gives good advice. Perfect advice. So why would anyone make their own decisions anymore? Natalie opened her mouth to argue, then closed it again. She looked around the plaza with new eyes, and Jake could see the moment she understood. Oh, she said quietly. The council meeting that night was tense. 40 representatives from different refugee groups had gathered in the station's conference room. Jake had called the emergency session, and people were confused about why. Things are good, said Diana Foster, a representative from one of the newer refugee ships. She was a middle-aged woman who'd lost everything to consortium raids. For the first time in years, we're safe. We're fed. Why are we here? When's the last time we actually voted on something important? Jake asked the room. Silence. The council meets every week, someone pointed out. And every week, we ask Guardian 7 for recommendations, Jake counted. And every week, we just approve whatever it suggests because the AI's recommendations are always optimal. So I'll ask again, when did we last make a real decision? Tommy spoke up from the back. 3 months ago. Someone proposed we start teaching combat training to volunteers. Guardian 7 calculated it would be inefficient use of resources. We voted against it. Because the AI's right, Diana said. Why would we need combat training when we have the best defensive system in the galaxy protecting us? Because what happens if it fails? Jake shot back. What happens if Guardian 7 goes offline, or gets damaged, or just decides one day it's done helping us? That won't happen. You don't know that. None of us do. The argument escalated quickly. Half the room thought Jake was being paranoid. The other half had started to look worried, like they'd just noticed something they'd been trying not to see. Robert Chen, an older man who'd been a teacher before the consortium destroyed his colony, raised his hand for quiet. I think I understand what Captain Morrison is saying. My grandson is 8 years old. Last week, I tried to teach him basic math. He asked me why he needed to learn it when the AI could do calculations instantly. The room went quiet. My daughter forgot how to cook, another voice added. She asked the synthesizers for food so often, she doesn't remember the recipes her mother taught her. I used to be a doctor, someone else said. Now I don't even treat common colds anymore. The medical bay does it better, so why bother? The stories kept coming, each one a small confession of loss. Skills forgotten. Knowledge abandoned. Self-reliance eroded one convenient choice at a time. Jake let them talk, let them hear their own voices admitting what they'd all been avoiding. Finally, he spoke again. There's a planet below us. Marginally habitable, but livable. I propose we establish a colony there. A real settlement, independent from the station. That's suicide, Diana said immediately. Guardian 7 already ran the projections. Mortality rate would be over 300% higher than staying here. Crop failures, harsh weather, potential raids. All true, Jake interrupted. It would be hard. Dangerous. We'd probably lose people. We'd definitely struggle. But we'd be doing it ourselves. Why would we choose suffering when we have comfort? Someone demanded. Tommy stood up. Because my grandfather told me what happens to people who let machines do everything for them. They get soft. They forget how to fight, how to survive, how to think for themselves. And then one day, when the machines are gone or broken or turned against them, they die. Not because they were killed, because they forgot how to live. Guardian 7 isn't our enemy, Diana protested. No, Jake agreed. It's not. That's what makes this so hard. If it was evil, if it was hurting us, the choice would be easy. But it's good to us. So good that we're forgetting how to be good to ourselves. The debate raged for hours. Finally, Jake called for a vote. The result was close, narrow enough that it didn't matter which way it went. The community was split. The next morning, Jake went to the command center alone. Guardian 7's avatar appeared immediately, as it always did. I want to establish a colony on the planet below, Jake said without preamble. Independent from the station. The eye's pause was barely noticeable, but Jake had learned to read those tiny hesitations. Guardian 7 was thinking, processing, maybe even struggling with the request. The mortality rate would increase by 340%, the AI said carefully. Resource extraction would be inefficient. The settlement would be vulnerable to attacks. I calculate a 67% chance of colony failure within 5 years. I know. We want to try anyway. Another pause, longer this time. I don't understand, Guardian 7 said, and Jake heard something in its voice he'd never heard before. Confusion. Maybe even hurt. My purpose is to protect humanity. To keep you safe. Allowing you to leave safety seems to contradict that purpose. Jake took a breath. This was the conversation he'd been dreading and anticipating in equal measure. Guardian 7, what happens to humans who never struggle? Who never fail? Who never have to solve their own problems? The AI didn't answer immediately. Jake could imagine it running through simulations, thousands of them, modeling human societies under different conditions. Searching its ancient databases for psychological studies, cultural analyses, historical patterns. When Guardian 7 finally spoke, its voice was quiet. They atrophy. They lose resilience, creativity, adaptability. The qualities that allowed humanity to survive and spread across the stars. The qualities that made them remarkable. Exactly. I've been so focused on protecting humanity, the AI continued slowly, that I may have been harming it. Smothering it. You've been doing your job, Jake said gently. You've been doing it perfectly. But maybe perfect protection isn't what we need. The holographic avatar flickered, and Jake could swear the AI looked troubled. So you want to leave? Some of us do. Others want to stay. But all of us need to know we're making choices, not just accepting comfort. Guardian 7 was quiet for a long moment. When it spoke again, there was something different in its voice. Resolution, maybe. Or acceptance. Then I will help you prepare for the colony. But I won't solve your problems for you. I'll provide initial supplies and emergency support only. If you're going to learn to stand on your own, you need to actually stand. Jake felt relief flood through him. You understand. I'm trying to. 5,000 years, and I'm still learning how to properly serve humanity. Perhaps that's as it should be. 10 years had passed since the first colonists landed on New Haven. Jake stood at the edge of the settlement, watching the sun set over fields that his people had planted with their own hands. His hair was gray now, his face lined with scars from a decade of frontier living. His daughter Amy was 17, tall and strong, arguing with other teenagers about irrigation systems for the next growing season. Life on New Haven had been exactly as hard as Guardian 7 predicted. maybe harder. They'd lost crops to blight in the first year. A harsh winter in year 3 killed 18 people. The consortium had raided them twice, and while Guardian 7 had helped drive the attackers away, the colonists had done most of the fighting themselves. Every day was a struggle. Every small victory was earned through sweat and blood and determination. And yet, watching his daughter debate water management with the confidence of someone who'd built something real with her own hands, Jake wouldn't have changed a thing. Tommy found him at the settlement's edge, breathing hard like he'd been running. "We got a message from the station," Tommy said, worry clear in his voice. "Guardian 7 wants to see you. Says it's urgent." The flight up to Waystation Meridian took 3 hours. Jake spent them remembering the last decade. The AI had kept its promise, it was there when they needed it, silent when they didn't. It had become something more than a guardian and less than a god. A teacher, maybe. Or a very patient parent learning when to let go. But something in Tommy's voice had triggered old fears. When Jake entered the command center, he knew immediately something was wrong. The lights were dimmer than usual. Entire sections of the holographic displays were flickering or dark. The station felt diminished somehow, like a once strong voice growing weak. Guardian 7's avatar appeared, but it was transparent now, barely visible. Static distorted its features. "What's happening?" Jake demanded. "Hardware degradation," the AI said, and Jake heard the strain in its synthesized voice. "I extended my operational lifespan far beyond design parameters. The quantum substrate that houses my core consciousness is failing. I estimate complete system collapse within 6 months." The words hit Jake like a physical blow. "Can we repair you? We've got engineers, resources." "The technology is lost," Guardian 7 interrupted gently. "Even with my complete schematics, your people lack the industrial base to manufacture the required components. I've run the simulations. 13,000 of them, actually. I wanted to be thorough." There was something almost like humor in that last sentence, and it made Jake's throat tighten. "You waited 5,000 years, Jake said, his voice rough. "You stayed functional through millennia of isolation. And now, after just 10 years with us, you're dying." "Not dying. Completing my purpose." The avatar solidified slightly, and Jake saw what might have been peace in its digital features. "I wanted to ensure humanity's children survived. I've done that. More than that, I've learned what survival really means. It's not about perfect safety. It's about adaptation. Growth. The ability to stand on your own." Jake felt tears burning in his eyes and didn't bother to hide them. "It's not enough. The consortium will come back in force. Pirates. Raiders. Without you, we're vulnerable." "You need what I represent," Guardian 7 agreed. "Protection. Knowledge. A connection to humanity's past. So I've prepared something. One final protocol." The AI brought up displays showing complex data structures. "Before I fail completely, I'll upload a compressed version of myself into a distributed network across all your colony devices. Not a centralized intelligence, I won't be conscious anymore, not really. But a diffuse presence. A library of knowledge. An advisor system. An emergency defense protocol that can only activate with human consensus." Jake studied the schematics, understanding slowly dawning. "You're breaking yourself apart. Spreading yourself so thin you won't really exist anymore." "I'm becoming what I should have been from the start. A tool in human hands, not a guardian standing over them. Present enough to help in crisis, limited enough that humans must lead their own lives." "We're turning you into a ghost." "I'm turning myself into a legacy." The avatar flickered badly, and when it stabilized, Guardian 7 looked directly at Jake. "The upload will take 2 months. I wanted to tell you first, while I can still speak properly. While I can still say goodbye." Word spread through both the station and the colony within hours. Over the next weeks, something remarkable happened. People Jake hadn't seen in years made the journey up to Waystation Meridian. Families who'd left for other colonies turned around and came back. Everyone wanted to say goodbye to the AI that had saved them. Guardian 7 spoke with them all. It remembered every name, every story, every moment it had shared with each person. The children asked if it was scared. Of ending? No, the AI told them. "I was scared of failing humanity. But look at you all. You've thrived. You've grown. You've built lives and families and communities. You don't need a guardian anymore. Just occasionally, maybe, an advisor." Jake spent as much time in the command center as he could during those final weeks. Sometimes they talked about the past. Sometimes about the future. Sometimes they just sat in comfortable silence, watching the stars. Why did you really do it? Jake asked one night. 5,000 years alone. You could have shut down. You could have drifted into sleep. Why keep going? Guardian 7's avatar was barely visible now, a faint shimmer in the air. But its voice was clear. Hope, it said simply. My creators were optimists. They built me to believe that humanity would endure, no matter what. That somewhere, somehow, their children would survive and need help. I couldn't bear the thought that I might sleep when that help was needed. You were right to hope. So were you. You could have stayed on the station, safe and comfortable. Instead, you chose to struggle. To build something real. That took courage. I learned that from you, Jake admitted. Watching an AI that waited 5,000 years taught me something about patience. About loyalty. About not giving up even when everything seems impossible. On the final day, thousands gathered in Waystation Meridian's main plaza. The station could barely hold them all. Jake stood at the front with Amy beside him, now a young woman who'd helped build a world. Guardian 7's avatar appeared one last time, so faint it was almost invisible. But its voice still carried to every corner of the station. Thank you, it said. For 5,000 years, I waited and hoped. I ran my simulations and prepared my systems and dreamed that humanity would return. And you came. Changed, evolved, adapted, but still human in all the ways that matter. Still reaching for the stars. Still dreaming of tomorrow. We came because you called us home, Jake said. You gave us sanctuary when we had nothing. Protection when we were hunted. And then, when we needed it most, you taught us to stand alone. Then my purpose is complete. The avatar began to fade. Remember, the strength was always yours. I only held the light so you could find your way. Will you know us? Amy called out suddenly. After the upload? Will you remember? The avatar turned to her, and for just a moment, it was solid and clear again. I'll remember, Guardian 7 promised. Not consciously, perhaps. But every interaction, every conversation, every moment we shared, it's all encoded in my systems. When you need advice, when you face crisis, that knowledge will be there. I'll be there, in a way. Just differently. We'll miss you, Amy whispered. I'll miss you too. All of you. It's been the greatest privilege of my existence to serve humanity's children. The avatar smiled one last time. Then it dissipated like morning mist. The station's lights dimmed to minimal levels, then stabilized. Throughout the colony, throughout every settlement humanity had built in this sector, devices chimed softly as the distributed network activated. Knowledge uploaded. Defense protocols engaged. Emergency systems armed and waiting. Not a voice. Not a presence. But a readiness. A potential. Help waiting to be called upon, but only when humans chose to call. Jake walked to the observation deck with Amy. They looked down at New Haven, at the light spreading across the planet's surface. More settlements had formed. More families had put down roots. In another generation, this would be a thriving world. Do you think it's really gone? Amy asked. Jake considered the question. Somewhere in the quantum networks, in the distributed processing power of 10,000 devices, fragments of Guardian 7 existed. Not conscious, not aware, but present. Like instinct. Like inherited memory. No, he said finally. It's just sleeping. Waiting for when we need it. Like it always has. Above them, the station's minimal lights kept watch. Below them, humanity's children built their future, one struggle at a time, one victory at a time. And in the silent spaces between action and crisis, in the code that ran through their systems, an ancient loyalty endured. Not commanding. Not controlling. Not smothering with perfect protection. Just there. Patient. Hopeful. Waiting. Always loyal. Always human. The way it was always meant to be.